The sun beat down mercilessly on the endless stretch of sand and jagged rocks. The desert was a brutal, unforgiving place where few dared to linger and fewer survived. Yet here she was, bound tightly with rough iron chains, her swollen belly aching beneath the relentless heat. Maria's breath came in shallow gasps, each one heavier than the last. They had called her a troublemaker, a woman who defied the laws of the town. But no one could have imagined the cruelty they would show. Her punishment was meant to be a warning, a spectacle to break her spirit, chained to a rickety wooden wagon, left to die in the barren wasteland, the very place where hope went to perish. The wagon creaked as the men pulled away, their horses kicking up clouds of dust that settled over Maria like a suffocating shroud. Her hands were bound behind her back, the cold metal biting into her skin. Despite the pain, her mind raced. How had it come to this? Just days ago, she had been preparing for her wedding, dreaming of a life filled with love and promise. Now, she was alone, pregnant, and forsaken. She could hear the faint voices of the men fading in the distance. The desert swallowed their figures quickly, as if reclaiming what was hers. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm her. But deep inside, a flicker of defiance sparked. Maria was a daughter of the desert. She had grown up hearing the stories of survival passed down by her ancestors, tales of people who had thrived where others had perished. They knew the land's secrets, where to find water hidden beneath the sand, which plants could heal, and how to move silently beneath the burning sun. Summoning all her remaining strength, she shifted, testing the chains. They were old and rusty, but unyielding. Yet desperation often bred ingenuity. Carefully, she began working the metal links against the jagged edge of a nearby rock, hoping to weaken them enough to slip free. Hours passed, and the sun sank lower, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. The desert night was a different beast, cold, silent, and filled with unseen dangers. Maria shivered despite the heat, clutching her belly protectively. The child growing inside her was her only reason to survive. As stars emerged, she finally felt a change. One link loosened. Hope surged through her veins like wildfire. Inch by inch, she freed herself until at last, the chains fell away with a heavy clatter. Now unbound but weak, she stood unsteadily, eyes scanning the endless horizon. The desert was vast, but she was not helpless. Somewhere out there, hidden, beneath the endless dunes, was her sanctuary. It would test her, but it would also protect her. And so began Maria's journey, a struggle between life and death. Pain and hope, abandonment and the fierce will to survive. The night was a canvas of stars, twinkling coldly over the vast desert that stretched endlessly in every direction. Maria's heart pounded not just from fear but from the resolve that now burned within her. The chains were gone, but her journey was only beginning. She was alone, pregnant, and wounded yet alive. Every step was a test. Her ankles ached, her breath came in ragged bursts, and the weight of the child she carried made every movement slower. But the desert was whispering to her in ways the men who abandoned her never understood. The desert was not just barren wasteland, it was alive, in her mind. She recalled the stories her grandmother told her as a child, stories of desert spirits, and hidden oases, tales of survival passed down through generations. Maria closed her eyes and listened to the night wind, letting it guide her. Somewhere beyond the dunes was water, somewhere was life. She reached for a small leather pouch at her side, a gift from her mother inside, a few dried herbs and roots known for their healing properties. Her lips moved silently as she prayed for strength. The night air cooled her burning skin, but the chill seeped deep into her bones. Every shadow seemed to twist into a threat: snakes, scorpions, predators she could neither see nor hear. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her and moved slowly but steadily. Hours passed. Fatigue gnawed at her and her steps faltered, but she refused to collapse. The child inside her kicked gently, a small reminder that she had to live, for both their sakes. Suddenly, a faint glimmer caught her eye, something shimmering just beyond a rocky outcrop. Hope surged. Crawling, she reached the spot and uncovered a small hollow, a natural basin in the rock carved over centuries by desert winds and rare rains. Inside, a pool of water glistened faintly under the moonlight. Maria's lips trembled. Water, she drank carefully, savoring the cool relief that flooded her parched throat. The desert was harsh, but it gave her this gift, a sanctuary. She pressed her hand against the stone basin, feeling an ancient connection to the land. Her journey was far from over, but for now, the desert had chosen to save her. The first light of dawn stretched over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and pink. Maria stirred beside the rock basin, her body weak but her spirit growing stronger. The water she had found was a small miracle, but she knew survival required more than just one blessing. Her swollen belly ached fiercely this morning, reminding her that time was slipping away. She needed shelter, food, and safety necessities the desert rarely gave freely. Still, she refused to surrender. Slowly, she rose and looked out over the vast emptiness. The sun climbed higher, threatening to scorch everything in its path. But Maria was learning the desert's language. The wind shifted, carrying faint scents and whispers that guided her steps. She remembered the old stories about plants that could heal, roots that could nourish, and animals that left signs before danger. Her fingers brushed against a rough cactus nearby, its spine sharp and unyielding, but within its tough exterior, she knew, was moisture and sustenance. Maria approached carefully, cutting a small piece of the cactus flesh with a shard of stone she had found. The sticky juice eased her thirst and soothed her cracked lips. It was a fragile gift from the desert, but it was enough to keep her moving. Hours passed as she made her way toward a distant ridge. Every step was a battle, but the child inside her stirred with every movement, a steady rhythm of life that fueled her courage. She thought of her wedding day, the hopeful smiles, the promises whispered. Now those memories were bittersweet, fueling a fire of determination. At the ridge, Maria paused, her eyes scanning the landscape. Far below, a patch of green peeked through the barren brown an oasis. Her heart leaped with hope. This was the sanctuary the desert had promised. But reaching it meant crossing a perilous stretch of sand, where no shade existed and the sun's heat bore down like a hammer. She weighed her options, then began the slow, grueling trek. Her breath grew shallow, her vision blurred, but she pushed on, driven by the child's life inside her and the will to survive. As she neared the oasis, a sudden rustle in the brush startled her. Heart pounding, she froze, then relaxed as a small desert fox emerged, its amber eyes curious but cautious. The creature watched her, and Maria felt an unexpected kinship. Alone in this wild land, they shared a silent understanding. The fox trotted away, disappearing into the shadows, and Maria pressed forward until finally, she reached the oasis. A small pool of clear water shimmered beneath the palms. Here, the air was cooler, the earth soft beneath her feet. Maria sank to the ground, tears of relief mingling with the dust on her cheeks. The desert had been cruel, but it had also been merciful. Here, she found shelter and strength to heal. The journey was far from over, but Maria knew one thing clearly. She was not alone. The oasis was a small patch of life in the vast desert. Palms swayed gently in the breeze, their fronds casting cool shadows on the sand. Maria sank to the ground beneath the largest tree, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Her body trembled with fatigue, but the peaceful sounds of water trickling in a small spring soothed her aching spirit. For the first time since she was left bound and abandoned, Maria felt a fragile sense of safety. The desert was still harsh and unpredictable, but here, in this hidden sanctuary, she could breathe. Days passed slowly. Maria drank from the spring and nibbled on wild berries and roots she cautiously gathered, recalling lessons from her grandmother's stories. Each meal was small but vital. The child inside her kicked, a reminder of the fragile life she was fighting to protect. She fashioned a shelter from palm leaves and dry branches, crafting a rough bed where she could rest without sinking into the hot sand. She was still weak, and the desert's unforgiving nature was a constant threat. Snakes slithered nearby, and the sun's heat was merciless. Yet, despite it all, Maria found moments of beauty. At night, the sky stretched endlessly above, a tapestry of stars so bright they seemed to sing. The desert breeze carried a quiet song, a lullaby for the lost and the brave. But even in sanctuary, shadows loomed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Maria heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, approaching from the edge of the oasis. Fear gripped her heart. Had the men who had chained her returned, or was it some other danger lurking in the desert's embrace? She grabbed a sturdy branch, her only weapon, and stepped cautiously toward the sound. From the shadows emerged a man, his clothes worn and dusty, but his eyes kind. He carried a water skin and a small bundle of food. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. "I've been watching over this oasis for some time. You're safe here." Maria's grip on the branch faltered. The man's face was weathered but familiar somehow, a protector, not a predator. "I'm Eli," he continued. "I know this desert well. You're lucky to have found this place." For the first time since her ordeal began, Maria felt a flicker of trust. Eli's presence was a reminder that the desert was not only a place of hardship, but also a home to those who respected its ways. Together, they shared stories by the fire. And Maria learned that Eli had lived alone for years, guarding the oasis, and helping lost travelers when he could. He knew the desert's secrets and had skills that might help her survive. As the night deepened, Maria allowed herself to hope. The desert had chosen to save her once, maybe it was saving her again. The following days at the oasis passed in a quiet rhythm, a fragile balance between healing and vigilance. Maria's body grew stronger with each sunrise, the pain of her ordeal softening like the desert sands at dawn. But the real transformation was deeper in her mind and spirit. Eli was a patient teacher. He showed her how to read the desert's subtle signs, the tracks left by animals, the way the wind shifted the sand, the types of plants that could be used for food and medicine. Every lesson was a small victory, a step toward reclaiming control over her life. One morning, Eli took her to a hidden cavern just beyond the palms, a cool refuge carved into the rock face. Inside, the air was cooler and the shadows longer. Here, he explained, was a place the desert kept secret, a sanctuary, not just for survival, but for reflection. Out here, Eli said, the desert tests you, but it also teaches you. It strips away what's false and leaves only what's real. It shows you who you are. Maria listened, her fingers tracing the rough stone walls. She thought about the chains that had bound her, the betrayal she had suffered, and the uncertain future she now faced. But she also thought about the child inside her, a symbol of new beginnings. Hope born from hardship. Over time, Maria learned to move with the desert instead of against it. She became attuned to its rhythms, waking before dawn to gather food, resting during the hottest hours, and traveling under the stars when the land was safest. Eli shared stories of his own survival, how he had come to guard the oasis after losing his family to a brutal raid, and how the desert had become both his prison and his salvation. One evening, as they sat beneath the vast sky, Maria asked, "Do you think the desert can forgive?" Eli smiled softly. "The desert doesn't forgive or punish. It simply is. It offers what you need, water, shelter, life, if you're willing to earn it." That night, as Maria lay under the open sky, the desert whispered its ancient secrets. The chains were gone, but her scars remained. Yet, within those scars, was strength, the strength to survive, to protect, and to one day return to the world that had cast her out. Weeks had passed since Maria found sanctuary in the oasis. The harshness of the desert still pressed close, but the wilderness no longer felt like an enemy. It had become a crucible where she was forged anew, stronger, wiser, and more determined. Yet, inside her, another storm was brewing. Her body was changing rapidly as the pregnancy advanced, bringing new challenges. Nights were restless with pain, and dreams that tangled hope and fear. Sometimes she awoke drenched in sweat, haunted by the memory of the chains and the men who had left her to die. Other times, she felt a fierce protectiveness surge through her, a raw, unyielding instinct to shield the life growing within her. Eli noticed the shifts. One evening, as they sat beside the fire, he said quietly, "You carry more than just a child. You carry the past, the pain, and the future all at once." Maria nodded, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "I'm scared," she admitted, "scared of what's to come. Scared I won't be strong enough." Eli reached out, placing a steady hand on hers. "You already are. The desert has chosen you because you have that strength, but even the strongest need help sometimes." In the days that followed, Eli taught her breathing techniques to ease the pain and guided her through gentle exercises to prepare her body. Together, they gathered medicinal herbs and prepared poultices to soothe her swelling and aches. But as Maria healed, the desert's beauty was shadowed by a brewing storm, both literal and metaphorical. One afternoon, dark clouds began rolling in from the horizon, unusual for this arid land. The wind howled, whipping the palms and stirring the sands into furious whirlwinds. The sky cracked with distant thunder. Eli hurried to secure their shelter. "A desert storm," he warned. "They can be fierce and sudden." Maria, despite her growing condition, moved quickly to help. The child inside her kicked sharply, as if sensing the danger. The storm was a reminder that the desert's mercy was never guaranteed. It was a constant test. As the storm hit, the winds screamed like wild beasts, tearing at their fragile home. Sand stung Maria's face, and the world blurred into a chaotic swirl of dust and noise. But in the eye of the storm, Maria felt a calm she had never known, a quiet resolve that no force, No cruelty could break her. When the storm finally passed, the desert lay quiet again, bathed in golden light. The oasis had weathered the tempest, and so had Maria. Her journey was far from over. But she had survived the storm within and without, a testament to the sanctuary she had found in the desert's embrace. The desert had tested Maria in every way possible, with scorching sun, biting winds, endless solitude, and unrelenting pain. But through it all, it had become her sanctuary, a place where strength and hope grew from hardship. Now, as the days lengthened toward the end of her pregnancy, Maria felt a quiet anticipation settle in her bones. The child inside her was alive and thriving. A symbol of resilience born from suffering, Eli had become a steady presence, protector, teacher, and friend. But the journey ahead belonged to Maria. She had learned to listen to the desert's whispers, to read its signs, and to move with its rhythms. One early morning, as the first light touched the dunes, Maria felt the first sharp pangs of labor. Eli was by her side, calm and reassuring. They fashioned a shelter near the spring, using palm leaves and soft sand as a bed. The oasis, once a fragile refuge, now felt like a cradle for new life. Hours passed, slow and painful. The desert sun climbed high, but Maria drew strength from deep within. She breathed steadily, remembering Eli's lessons, the desert's harsh beauty, and the promise she had made to herself and her unborn child, to survive, no matter what. When the baby finally arrived, the desert held its breath. A small cry broke the silence, a fragile sound that echoed beneath the endless sky. Maria's tears mingled with sweat and sand as she cradled her child, a boy, healthy and strong. The desert's sanctuary had been real. It had saved her and given her new life. As evening fell, Eli tended to them both, his eyes shining with quiet pride. Maria looked out over the oasis, the stars beginning to shimmer above. The desert stretched beyond, vast and eternal, but no longer a place of fear. It was a home. She whispered a soft promise to the child in her arms. This desert chose to save us, and we will honor it by living, by fighting, and by never forgetting. The chains were gone, replaced by freedom. The wasteland had become a sanctuary. And under the endless desert sky, Maria's new beginning had begun.